And then in the blink of an eye, they just grabbed one another, and the fight was absolutely brutal. But all this commotion and all this noise seemed to just be a magnet for every bear in the area. And before we knew it, we were surrounded by 5 individuals. Over the next few days, the weather got windier and windier and windier, and so we had a couple days aboard the boat. Eventually, the weather calmed down and we were able to get back to the bay. And so we did our regular thing. We walked through the meadows, we set up shop, and we waited to see which bears were around.
Yeah, it is.
Break your back, you know.
And on this particular day, we set up on the edge of a sedge meadow, and we were there waiting to see what would unfold. Once again, we saw a little brown dot on the horizon, and Drew looked through his binoculars, and again, he wasn't sure if he recognised the bear. It definitely was a bear that we hadn't seen already, and it was definitely a big male bear. I set the GoPro up behind me and I started taking pictures as this bear started walking closer and closer and closer. And all the interactions we'd had so far, the biggest males had been quite far away. You're talking 15, 20 meters, still quite away. And that was intimidating enough, really, if I'm honest. And this big male was heading straight towards us. He knew we were there, he wanted to check us out. And this was one of those moments in my career where I really had no idea how this was going to unfold.
It must recognise that sound.
So as I'm taking pictures of this bear, starts off quite normal, you know, a nice wide picture. But when you're looking through the lens, you sort of get detached from the situation a bit. And I noticed that as I was taking pictures of this bear, it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger in frame. And the adrenaline that was pumping through me, this bear was by far the biggest bear we'd seen. He was enormous. He was so heavily set, huge paws, massive head, and he just was walking, sniffing the ground, obviously following a scent, and then he looked up and he looked straight at us. And I've never felt smaller in my entire life.
He is coming this way, isn't he? Hey buddy, it's close enough.
he came past us and walked to the left, and it looked like he was going to continue walking that direction. It was at that point he turned and came straight towards us.
Hey, buddy. That's close enough.
And you can see, I just put my hand down. I didn't put the camera down, but I put my hand down just because I was like almost bracing myself for what's going to happen. And he walked round us. And as he walked in front of me, the sheer size of that animal became apparent. He was enormous. You could hear him breathing. You could feel his footsteps almost in the ground. And as he walked off, he just walked past Pete and continued on his way. And I had adrenaline pumping through my veins, hands shaking for at least the next hour. It was unreal. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Almost fell over at one point.
He said, socks? Can you get me there?
And just as quickly as this huge male bear had arrived, he disappeared. And we didn't know exactly where he went, so we picked up all our gear, we moved over to a neighbouring meadow to see if we could see where he was. And we didn't find the big guy, who we actually ended up calling Iron Mike, but we found Patches, and she had a different male following her. We saw Patches, we saw this other big male. Drew, again, wasn't quite sure which bear this might be, but you can see how different he looked, much finer features, still a big boy. But he was much paler in his coat and obviously very, very calm. He was a very calm male. And Patches was in the distance being followed by this big guy. And so we thought, that's a safe bet. We'll head over there and see if Iron Mike turns up anywhere. So we set up on the edge of the sedge meadow, and you can actually see there's a difference between sedge grass and normal grass. And you can see it in this clip. The sedge is a deeper green, it's shorter, and then you get this longer grass which is less palatable for the bears. They want the shorter, protein-rich sedge. So Patches had this big male following her. And what's the rule when you've got a big male bear following you as a female? You can go wherever you want. And so Patches wanted to come over to where we were, be it because we were on some sedge, be it because she was going that way anyway, or she was just curious and wanted to see what we were doing. So she started moving directly towards us. Once again, Drew saw this situation evolving, and he knew exactly the limit that he was willing to let Patches get to us before he was going to intervene in her behaviour. And so as she's moving towards us, Drew just does a subtle shift of his shoulders, and that is enough to tell Patches, back off, we're not moving, so you stick to your space, we'll stick to our space. And you can see instantly she picks up the cue, she makes a slight deviation in her path, and she walks round us.
She's going to go just to the left of you, isn't she?
it was amazing to see even these small female bears in comparison to these large males. They are massive, and she came particularly close to Pete as she walked round, and again the adrenaline was pumping. Then off to where there was actually a smaller female or male bear just off in the distance. Now, Patches had walked round us, and she was being followed by this big male, so naturally he came towards us as well, but he took a slightly wider route around us. He was not interested in showing off. He was walking wide, that what they do, a cowboy walk, which is like a dominant walk. He was weeing on the ground. He was marking his territory. He was following Patches, but he wasn't interested in us at all. And so he walked round us and followed her. And then they settled in the meadow right in front of us for the next hour. It was amazing. We managed to film some beautiful shots of them following one another in this beautiful light, eating the sedge. And it was just an amazing moment. But we'd been watching these two for quite a while, and they headed off into the distance, and we turned, and it was none other than Iron Mike. Iron Mike had smelt this male, he'd smelt this female, and he was coming over. He was the biggest bear by far in the area. He was like, what is going on? You know, I can smell these individuals. I'm coming over to check it out. He was actually come over the brow of this bush, so it was quite short notice. So I didn't have time to pull out my camera, but I did quickly pull out my phone. And this is the moment where Iron Mike basically almost stepped on us.
Close enough, buddy. Close enough.
Again, let me rewind and break that situation down. So Iron Mike had been following the scent of this male and this female. The way to describe it is, if you're driving a car and you're thinking about something really important, or your mind starts to wander, then you snap back to reality, you're almost in autopilot. All of a sudden you realise, oh, I've driven this far down the road. I don't necessarily remember doing that driving. And so Drew just, once again, he had the flare ready in his hands, but as Iron Mike came close, he quietly, calmly said, hey buddy, close enough.
Close enough, buddy. Close enough.
And that was enough to just snap Iron Mike out of this trance that he was in. And you can see the moment where he snaps out of it. he takes this step back,
Closer now.
and then he continues sniffing the air, and then he continues following that route round.
He's backtracking.
Again, you know, this was a moment where we were so close to this huge guy. The adrenaline was pumping, the fingertips were tingling, and it was just, my body was shaking. It was amazing to be so close to such a huge, powerful beast, but be completely fine. Even though you're right in front of them, he was sniffing, nose up, he was looking for that big male bear. And because we'd seen the other male bear there, we had an idea of the route that he was about to walk.
I'll probably follow the exact same track.
God, he's big. He's waiting over the same patch. He's covering the other guys.
Because of the proximity, moving towards that camera and grabbing and starting filming was just not a smart thing to do. It was to sit still, be calm, let him do his move, and then we could film once he was a bit further away. But it was just the most incredible trip. What an amazing place. You truly are in raw wilderness on the edge of the world, and I feel very lucky to have visited. I feel very lucky to have seen the things that I did, witness the behaviors, and see animals as awesome and inspiring and humbling as that just behave naturally in their natural environment. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed telling it. If you want to see more and hear more, click like and subscribe. There's so much more on the way. I have so much footage to show you and talk about, so many images to show you of so many adventures all over the world. Here are a couple more photos from the rest of that trip. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this series, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks again.